And we're back. Like a right out of place. Put that name upon your face. I got all my life to live. I got all my love to give. I was lying. Somebody's ding donging me, but I don't know who it is. Hi, I'm Brooke Rose. We're back. Tonight we got some interesting subjects. We're going to talk about myths and stuff like that. Like chemtrails and UFOs and cryptids, stuff like that. We're going to get into it here in a second. Just let me get settled for a minute. I just walked in the door. Who do we got here? Hello, Echo. How's Echo doing? By the way, Chris is back in the hospital. Wanted to let people know that. She's back in the hospital. I just go. Wait, right off the bat. Yeah, she actually had a stroke. They don't know when she had it, but she had a stroke. So please pray for Chrissy. And pray that she gets better soon. So we're going to start here in a second, and we're going to go through some stuff. It's pretty fun stuff. I think you guys will like it. So we'll get right into it, but I know, dang, Chris, I know what you mean, Nick. It's like, God dang it, we're doing. But she's watching right now, so if you guys want to say or wish her well, she is watching. She's in the hospital. I just got back from there. Yeah, ignore the bullshit. Who gives a crap about them fuckers? Anyway, yeah, Chris is in the hospital. She is watching. She'll say hi. She should chime in here unless she fell back to sleep because she was asleep when I got there, but I brought her a coffee. So we'll get right into it. Then tonight we're going to start one of the most talked about, right? Chemtrails. Chemtrails. So what is the claim? Chemtrail theory says that aircrafts are deliberately spraying chemicals into the atmosphere for hidden purposes, depending on who you ask. Those purposes include weather control, population control, climate engineering, or biological testing. The evidence people point to is visible. The long white trails behind airplanes that you see up in the sky, especially when those trails when they linger, spread out, or form patterns across the sky. So what's the popular belief? For many people, this didn't begin as a conspiracy theory. It started as an observation. People noticed the sky looked different. Older jet trails often disappeared quickly. Newer ones sometimes stayed for hours. They spread widely, widened. They looked intentional. When several planes crossed paths, it looked planned. There's also a trust issue. Governments have conducted secret experiments in the past, especially during the Cold War. Some atmospheric testing programs were only revealed years later. Because that history exists, some people, assume similar programs could exist today. Add social media where images spread faster than explanations, the idea gains momentum. Now, what does that science say? Jet engines burn hydrocarbon fuel. That produces carbon dioxide, water vapors, heat into small particles at cruising altitudes, usually 30 to 40,000 feet. The air is extremely cold, often colder than minus 40 degrees. When hot exhaust meets that cold air, the water vapors freeze instantly. It forms tiny ice crystals. Those ice crystals are called contrails, or condensation trails for the actual name of it. Whether a contrail disappears quickly or stays visible depends mostly on humidity, dry air. The ice crystals evaporate quickly. Humid air, they persist. They spread, sometimes forming thin circuit clouds. Meteorologists can actually predict when this will happen. Modern engines being more efficient does not eliminate controls or contras. In some cases, it affects engines produce colder exhaust. That can actually make contrails easier to form. And there's another factor. There are simply more airplanes now. More air traffic means more overlapping trails. The sky looks busier than it did decades ago. So what evidence is missing? Environmental testing of air, the soil and rainfall has not showed chemical signatures consistent with large-scale spraying. What do you mean with large-scale spraying? Any spraying is bad. Chemical aircrafts are heavily inspected and regulated. Adding spray systems would require tanks, pumps, plumbing, and maintenance records. Thousands of mechanics and engineers would see it. No verified physical evidence of such systems has been produced. There are also real topics that get mixed into the discussion. Aviation emissions do affect the environment, and researchers have discussed theoretically geoengineering ideas. But discussing a theory is not evidence of an active program. So where does this land? The trails are real. The change people notice in the sky is real. Aircraft emissions can influence cloud formations, but the explanation that commercial planes are secretly spraying chemicals is not supported by physical evidence or astrophysical measurements. So, what do you guys think? Do you think that it's out there? Do you think chemtrails or something or nothing? Oh my gosh, idiots are out early, huh? So think about that. Because I hear a lot of times people say that the chemtrails are, basically they're trying to mess with us again like they did back in the day. I personally don't think so. I think it's just exhaust burning. But, that's just me. So, that's the people. So, if you saw something in the sky, would it change it? Has this explanation changed your opinion when you see chemtrails or not? I never got the whole thing that it was the government spraying. But then again, I remember there was a story about they sprayed this black community like in Louisiana or something like that, and they all got sick for years and cancer and stuff like that. I don't know. I just report the news. I don't make it. So we just have to follow the physics and see what happens. It could be. I mean, our governments, they're capable of doing just about anything, aren't they? So next subject, we've got a few of these too, are UFOs, UAPs, claim versus reality, right? So this topic, UFOs, or what governments now call UAPs, unidentified anonymous phenomena. Why can't we just stick to UFOs? Why do they have to be changed the name and stuff? What is the claim? The claim is that governments, especially the United States government, know more about unidentified objects in our sky than they publicly admit. Some versions go further. They claim recovered alien technology or even non-human craft. Now, what's the popular belief? This topic changes in recent years because sometimes something real happened. Military videos were released. Pilots described objects they could not identify. Congress actually held hearings, and the government agencies confirmed that some aerial encounters remain unexplained. I've done a poll here on this channel, and it was 51% did not believe in UFOs. 51%. I thought it would be higher that did, but it wasn't. So for many people, that was the moment the subject stopped feeling fringe. It felt official. There is also a trust component, right? Because the people that are testifying are like pilots and stuff like that. Historically, governments have classified information for national security reasons. And sometimes the public only learns the full story later. Years later, as a matter of fact. So the reasoning becomes simple. If information has been hidden before, maybe it's being hidden now. So what does science and evidence actually say? First, identified does not mean extraterrestrial. It means unidentified. Something was observed, tracked, or recorded, and the explanation was not immediately clear. Many cases, once investigations turned out to be weather, balloons, drones, sensor errors, or optical effects. Some remain unresolved. Those are the ones that I'm interested in. But unresolved does not equal aliens. It means insufficient data. Modern sensors also factor in radar infrared tracking, and high-resolution cameras are far more sensitive today. We are detecting more things because we are looking better, not necessarily because there are more things up there in the sky. What evidence is missing? There is no verified physical evidence of extraterrestrial craft. No confirmed materials, no confirmed biological evidence, and no independently verified recovery programs. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. If you haven't heard that, I think that was one of our presidents that said that way back when. And the evidence has not been produced. Excuse me. There are also real issues mixed into the topic. Military pilots do encounter unknown objects, foreign technologies, classified testing, and sensor limitations can all create genuine uncertainty. So the mystery itself is real. The conclusion people jump to is where we suspect the speculation begins, right? So where does this land? Unidentified aerial phenomena exist. That's part is confirmed. Government investigations has said that. The part is also confirmed, but they claim that governments possess alien technology and remains. I've heard they have biological, so they have a little alien somewhere that they're keeping from us all. That's kind of crazy to me. So here's my take. This is one of those subjects, curiosity makes sense. If trained pilots say, I don't know what that was, people pay attention. Right? But that's normal. But here's the difference between not knowing what something is and deciding what it must be. The honest answer sometimes is uncomfortable. Sometimes the answer is simply, we don't know yet. And that's okay. Real investigations mean being willing to stop at uncertainty instead of filling the gap with a story. I personally believe that there's aliens out there. I think that I've seen a few things that could constitute as extremely odd. One was a wispy cloud that just kind of was there and then not. Another one was a light that shined down on me and my buddy when we were camping as kids. Just came out of the sky, a beam of light. And then it just went away. And it wasn't a helicopter. So what was it? I don't know. You guys tell me. Have you guys ever seen aliens? Nobody hears what man he was saying. Boy, you guys are just rotten to the core, I tell you. I think, just for you Bible numbers, here's a little verse for you. God said, love thy enemy, right? Same. That's what your God said. But anyway, I love you all. I think you're all very special. And I'll get to you guys in a minute. Just hang on, hang with me. I will get to the comment section here plenty soon. And I'm in no mood for you buttheads tonight. So it's on, baby. So getting back to the common things that today's people, usually between the ages of like 25 and 40, what they believe, what they're up against as far as their suspicions and superstitions are these days. Let's talk about aliens. Now we'll talk about everybody's favorite subject, the transgender issue. How do people, young adults, young parents, really feel about transgender people these days? I know that I think as Gen Z is very supportive. They're the ones protesting and all that stuff. And I'm pretty sure that the boomers and the silent generation are confused. They just don't know what to think. X, they're just X. So the myth versus reality. Here we go. The transgender conversation and why it has become one of the most debated subjects for adults today. What is the claim? Depending on who you ask, the claims are very different. Some people believe gender identity issues began exaggerated or socially encouraged. Others believe transgender people are widely misunderstood and unfairly targeted. And many people in the middle feel confused by rapidly changing languages, policies, and cultures and explanations. Now, what is the popular belief? For adults between 30 and 45, the topic feels sudden. Many grew up in a time where gender discussions were rare and private. Then within a relatively short period of time, the topic became highly visible in the media, schools, and politics. The rapid change created uncertainty. When change happens quickly, people tend to ask, is this new or was it always here? Right? There's also a trust component. Some people worry that discussion is restricted or that questions are discouraged. Others worry that misinformation spreads easily online. So the conversation often becomes emotional before it became factual. So what does science and evidence say? Medical and psychological organizations recognize gender dysphoria as a real condition. I can verify for that. That means some individuals experience significant distress because of their gender identity does not align with their biological sex. Treatment approaches vary, right? And can include counseling, social transitioning, and in some cases, medical treatment, depending on age and clinical evaluation. Research shows outcomes varies by individuals. Excuse me, I'm so sorry, guys. And the subject is still actively studied. There is no universal agreement on every policy question or questions, right? Especially around youth treatment. I don't think kids before they're 18 should have treatments at all. Recently, there has been a court settlement where somebody won $2 million because they claimed malpractice against the surgeon and the therapist, and they won. That's the precedent set there. That means there's going to be a lot more to come. You can bet on that. Shouldn't mess with kids. Just telling you, leave the kids alone. And then there's the sports participation. The legal standards, what evidence is missing? So what evidence is missing? There is no evidence that the majority of people are being turned transgender by media or social influence. But I think there is some influence there, especially on the younger kids. At the same time, long-term research is going on, and not every question has, a settled answer. This is an area where science, medicine, and culture are still evolving. There are also real issues mixed into the conversation. Online discussions often amplify extremes, right? The louder voices on both sides do not represent most people. Most adults are simply trying to understand a complicated issue, right, while balancing fairness, individual freedom, and social norms. So where does this land? Well, transgender people exist. Obviously, gender dysphoria is recognized medically, and it is. But many people arguments come from misunderstanding, rapid cultural changes, and incomplete information rather than clear facts. Right? So here's my take. This topic gets heated fast, as you can tell by just looking at chat, because it touches identity, fairness, and personal experience. But most people aren't trying to fight. They're trying to understand. That mistake happens when people stop listening and start assuming motives. Real conversations happen when people questioned are allowed to answer on basis of evidence, not fear. And like many topics, tonight, the goal isn't to force agreement, it's to replace the noise with understanding. I think, and I know that transgender, dysphoria is something that you cannot explain to somebody what we go through. Because unless you've been through it, it's just inexplainable. As close as I came, it's a serious depression that doesn't go away until you start to transition. And once you begin to transition, it seems like it starts to alleviate because I believe that we're born this way. There's scientific evidence to back it up, but it hasn't been completely proven yet to where it's widely accepted by the medical institutions. But I know for a fact it's true. But if you just look at the chat, you can tell there's a lot of people in here who disagree with me. They think I'm some kind of an abomination. I think they're kind of rude. I think they don't know me, and if they knew me, they might not be talking like they are. I don't even have to look to know what they're saying. You got Bible people telling me to go to God, and I'm an abomination, and you got everybody else saying, you're a man, you're a dude, you're a man. Well, here's what I say to people. I am biologically male. I'm not a biological female. I know that. Duh. I can't get pregnant. I can't give birth. But I'm okay. I'm a transgender woman, and I'm proud of that. I don't feel that I need to take anything from biological women to be proud of who I am. I don't think kids should transition when they're young. I don't think they have the mental aptitude to understand exactly what they're agreeing to. That's a big problem for me. Transitioning kids before they realize exactly what they're even getting into is an issue. Transgender people in sports, I think, is an unfair advantage. Science shows it. It's not even a debate. It's obvious to me. Duh. You have an advantage, therefore it's not an even competition. Therefore, transgender athletes should not be in girls' sports. We'll get our own category, but even saying stuff as much common sense as that, like we all should agree on this, I think, but still, no. People just can't agree on it. People are fighting left and right to convince the world that there's no advantage when there is. It's just crazy. I don't understand it, but I don't understand a lot of things. So, what do you guys think? Leave it in the chat. I'll get to the chat here when I finish the structure part of this, because the chat is gets very vile at times. But so those are my opinions. Oh, one more opinion that I always bring up for every show is locker rooms. I think if you have a penis, you do not belong where women disrobe and take showers in the gyms, the locker rooms and stuff. However, when it comes to bathrooms, if you look like me, then I think you should be able to use the women's bathroom and not have to go to the men's. However, if you claim to be trans, but you still look very male, then you probably should use the men's bathroom, right? But know this, transgender people don't go into bathrooms to do anything other than go to the bathroom. They're not stalking you. They're not trying to fool anybody. They're just trying to use the bathroom. And people make too big of a deal over it. I think it's actually kind of humorous how much of a deal people make over the bathroom. But that's the way it is. You know, me personally, I've had bottom surgery, top surgery, and I'm not going to go take a shower in the men's shower. I'm just not going to do it. Regardless of what people seem to think, I don't think there's a woman out there that would have an issue with me using the women's showers because I have a vagina, right? I'm surely not going to put myself in harm's way and use the men's bathroom or men's showers at a locker, at the pool or the gym or whatever. And anybody with, I think, with half a brain would agree with me. But, you know, then again, a lot of people out there don't have half a brain either, right? So let's move on to the next one. Supernatural claim versus reality, right? So supernatural ghost, paranormal experiences, and the feeling that some things can't be explained. First, what is the claim? The claim is that people experience events that cannot be explained by normal science. Objects move, voices heard, no figures seen, or a strong feeling that something's present. Many people believe that these experiences are evidence of spirits or another form of existence. Now, if you look in there, Echo, if Echo's still here, Echo believes fully that there is something after this life. You could not tell her any different. She fully believes that. So, what is the popular belief? This topic, surprisingly, is common amongst adults between 30 and 45. Not always as a firm belief, more as a personal story. Sometimes they experience once. A moment that felt real enough to question, and because the experience felt personal, it feels difficult to dismiss. There's also a cultural factor, right? Movies, television, online stories shape how people interpret unusual experiences. When something strange happens, people reach for explanations. Now, me personally, I used to love watching those ghost shows, and they never convinced me of anything. We got a super chat here. Brooke's the best. Thank you for that. I appreciate it, Buggy. Appreciate that a lot. Thank you. Where was I? Yeah. me personally, I've seen those ghost shows, but I've watched them for years, and yet there's never any definitive proof that they hear something weird. There are some little bits, but you'd think after all those shows, they would have at least one thing on tape where it's just like totally bang in your face. But it's not there. So what does the science say? Human precaution is not perfect. Human perception is not perfect. The brain consistently fills in gaps. In low light, during stress, or when tired, the brain can misinterpret ordinary sounds or shadows. Right? Sleep paralysis. I've heard about that sleep paralysis. I've never experienced it. It sounds scary as hell. For example, the sleep paralysis, people can create extremely vivid experiences while people feel awake but unable to move. That would freak me the frick out, man. If I woke up and I couldn't move, often sensing present environmental factors like infrasound, carbon monoxide. That's one thing. Chrissy, one time I was at work and she brushed up against our stove while she was walking by. She turned the carbon monoxide on by accident. Let go of the real mystery. What's your dead name? What do you care what my name is? What does that matter to you? My name was Robert before. I'm not afraid of who I am. I'm not ashamed of who I am. I'm proud to be a transgender woman. So, yeah, Chrissy, she bumped up against the knob on the stove, didn't realize it. Later on, I came home, opened the door. You'd knocked me over with the smell of propane. She was in the bedroom sleeping. Had I worked an hour longer, she'd be gone. Yeah, so that's scary stuff. So the carbon monoxide, electromagnetic interference. If you have a high MF something field, it can cause hallucinations. It's also been shown to create sensations people describe as paranormal. What evidence is missing? Despite thousands of investigations, there has been no reliable, verifiable evidence of supernatural activity under controlled conditions. Experiences are real. They're real to the people having them, but personal experiences alone does not establish a supernatural cause. There are also real reasons people hold on to their beliefs. The idea that something exists beyond what we understand can be comforting. It can give meaning to loss. I know when my grandmother died, the mini blind above my head jumped off the track and hit me right in the neck, right in the skull. And then my phone rang and they told me my grandma just passed. I think that was my grandmother hit me in the noggin saying goodbye. I don't know, though. It's unexplained. So the belief itself often serves an emotional purpose. So where does this land? People genuinely experience things they cannot explain. That part is real. But current evidence suggests that most experiences have psychological, environmental, or neurological explanations. So here's my take. This is one of those topics where curiosity is natural. Everyone has had a moment that made them stop. Every single night that I go to bed, it feels like somebody's sitting on the bed at my feet. I even feel the cushions indent, sink down a little bit every night, right before I go to sleep. What's that about? I don't know. I think it's my guardian angel. It doesn't scare me, and I'm pretty much a scaredy cat of everything. But mysteries doesn't automatically mean supernatural. Something, sometimes the honest answer is we don't fully understand how, that perception works yet. And sometimes what feels unexplained, simply something we haven't explained yet. Or maybe it's another dimension. Who knows? I don't know. Ask Echo. Echo, as all the conference in the world, has experiences of that kind of stuff. I'm kind of jealous because I would love to be certain that there's an afterlife, especially at my age. So we'll go from there. So the next topic we'll talk about then, the beliefs that the younger generations are less willing to fight for their country. This is one. Now, I'm not sure about this one because I remember asking my boss's son, I says, I'm worried about us starting World War III because that would mean that you would have to go fight because this boy happens to be 16 years old and stuff. And he goes, well, I wouldn't like it, but if I went, I would fight my ass off for this country. And I thought, that's a surprise. I didn't think that kids that these days would think that way, right? So the claim is that adults today, especially those, between 20 and 35, were less willing to serve the military or respond to a national draft compared to previous generations. You often hear this framed as, this generation won't fight, or people today are too comfortable or too divided. Now, what is the popular belief? This idea often comes from comparison to earlier periods in history, World War II, Vietnam, the Cold War era. Many people grew up hearing stories of large numbers of young people serving and assumed willingness was higher. At the same time, today's generation is often described as more individualistic, more questioning of authority, and less trusting of institutions. So the assumption becomes less trust equals less willingness. So what does the evidence say, right? Military recruitment data shows that willingness to serve has changed over time, but not in a simple way. Fewer people today have direct families connected to military service. Fewer were involved large-scale drafts. And modern welfare, relies more on technology than professional volunteer, based than mass mobilization of people. Surveys show mixed results. Young people and adults express hesitation about specific wars or political decisions, while still expressing willingness to defend the country itself. If it was under direct threats. I wonder what happened if they invaded on U.S. soil. There's so many firearms per person in this country. Yeah, I think Americans would stand up and protect themselves. So it's an important distinction. Questioning a war is not the same as refusing to defend a country. Previous generations also, debated wars intensely, including during Vietnam. That was kind of when I was born, right around there, 64 when I was born. I think they ended at 67 or something like that. What evidence is missing? There is no clear evidence that an entire generation is unwilling to serve. Actual behavior in crisis situation is difficult to predict, right? Historically, majority national threats often change people's attitude. Like when we had 9/11, 9/11 saw people volunteering for the military at an all-time high. And since Trump has taken office, they're also military, enrollment is an all-time high. I guess it kind of depends on what's going on, right? There's also the factors of shaping perceptions. Younger generations today grew up during the long overseas conflict and unclear outcomes. They also have greater access to global information and competing views. This tends to make people more cautious about military involvement, not necessarily less courageous. So where does this land? Willingness to serve today appears more conditional, less automatic, and more dependent on the perceived purpose and the necessity of the conflict. That reflects changing attitudes towards authority, not necessarily a lack of patriotism. My take on this is every generation gets judged by one before it. Older generations remember sacrifice. Younger generations remember complexity. The real question isn't whether people today would step up. It's whether they believe the reason is justified. History shows that when people believe something truly matters, generations tend to respond. The myth may be about courage. It may be about trust. But I happen to think that if we were in a war situation, I think that our younger generation would step up to the plate and fight for this country because we have too much to lose, and that might come. You just never know. The stability in this world is not very strong right now. It's pretty shaky, right? I don't know. Would you join? Would you fight for this country right now? Or is it just too screwed up and you don't think it'd be right? Or is your hatred of our President Trump so much so that you wouldn't do anything to benefit him or anything that he was asked of you to do? That's a good question. I don't know. I'm too old to serve. So how about this one? Income affordability versus then and now. Because I remember my grandma didn't work. My grandpa did. We had a big garden. He supported the whole family. Everybody was happy. They bought a house, stayed in it for 50 years. I don't know if you could do that today. Can a single person afford to support a family on, let's say, a carpenter's pay or a mechanic's pay or working at Costco or whatever? I'm not sure. When I worked at Costco, my manager's pay when I started being a manager was $34,000 a year. Today, that would be extreme poverty. Heck, in California, if you earn $100,000 a year, you're considered low income. Can you believe that? 100 grand a year, low income in California. Wow. So let's look into that then. Income and affordability and the belief that life was financially easier in the 1960s. That was when I was born, 64. First, what is the claim? You often hear that previous generations worked harder, saved more, and simply made better financial choices. The idea is that young adults today did the same thing, they would reach the same results. Buy a home early, support a family on one income, build stability faster. I'm not so sure about that. So, what is the popular belief? Adults between 30 and 45 grew up hearing these stories. Parents who bought homes young, stayed in one career, and built financial security early. So when those same milestones feel harder to reach today, people assume something must be wrong, either the system or with themselves. So what does the evidence say? In the 1960s, housing prices relative to income were significantly lower. College tuition was lower. Healthcare costs were lower, and many industries offered long-term employment with predictable wage growth. A single income household was more common. Today, the structure looks different. Housing prices have risen faster than wages in many of the regions. So, education costs increased dramatically. Career path is less stable, and workers change jobs more often because companies restructure more often. And another one's coming with the AI robot bullshit, right? These changes in timelines for financial stability. So what evidence is missing then? There's no clear evidence that people today are less willing to work or less responsible financially. Economic conditions changed. What worked once in that era does not always translate to another, right? There are also myths about the past. 1960s economy did not, benefit anyone's equality. Many groups had limited access to higher paying jobs, homeownership, or educational opportunities. So the picture people remember is often incomplete. My mom was a single parent raising 3 boys on her own. She working at a donut shop and then had a line job the rest of the time. She didn't think it was easy, I'll tell you that right now. So where does this land? Affordability, pressures today, measurable difference, that part is real. But the idea that one generation simply worked harder than the other is not supported by evidence, right? The rules changed. My take on this is where frustration really comes from people comparing their lives to the path they were told should work. And when it doesn't, they assume failure. Sometimes it isn't failure. Sometimes it's environmental change. Understanding that difference matter, because you can't save today's problem using yesterday's rules. Also, I think that my generation has put the generation following me in kind of a bind. We're leaving you this huge debt, a screwed up government, corrupt government. So how are you supposed to pick up what we're leaving behind so easily and just run with it? The price of houses are out of control. My generation shipped all the jobs overseas. So where's the entry-level jobs? And the entry-level jobs are now going to people that came across our borders illegally. So where does that leave your average American young person that wants to start a family and buy a house? I think it puts you guys behind the ball. And until we admit our mistakes, balance the budget, it's not going to get any better for the young people. This is irresponsible of Generation X. The end of boomers. I'm the end of boomers. There's Generation X who likes to talk so highly about themselves, but look at the debt we've accumulated over their watch. When I say watch, I mean when you're the age of voting. So for the last 40 years, Generation X has been the voting population, and they have screwed up the choices. I'm sorry to say that, but that's just the truth. My parents left us a decent country. They had their problems, but it was decent. What are we leaving our kids? Are we leaving them? We're leaving them a mess. $33 trillion in debt. The most corrupt politicians ever. We screwed up. We were the ones voting them into power, not the kids following us. Take responsibility for your actions. That's what I say. You know, if you can't admit your wrongs, then you're just, I don't get it. But we need to take advantage of who we, led into power. I'll get to the questions in a minute. I like that last comment, all caps. I agree with you there too. Almost done with the structured part. Then we shift over to the chat, right? And we'll let you guys go, and we'll yickety yak with all you. I know that in between here, there's good people asking real questions and stuff in between all the noise. Those are the ones that I'm interested in the most, right? Right? Okay, so let me see. What is the next topic we're at? Okay, myths versus reality. Adults then versus adults now. What were adults like back in the 60s compared to adults now? And I'm talking the younger adults, 30 years old, 35, 40, 25, somewhere around there. What is the difference between them and now? How is the difference? I personally think that adults nowadays are more mature than adults back then. A lot of people think I'm backwards on that, but I think they are, because I think they've experienced more. They definitely have more world knowledge because of the instant communication with anybody in the world. So that gives you guys an advantage. Back then, we didn't realize, excuse me, I'm so sorry. We didn't realize that the media was so manipulative back then, even though we were being misled, but there was only a few stations. And back when I was young, when the news said something, you trusted them. Nowadays, you can't trust them at all. When the president said something, everybody listened. When they had nobody, you might not have agreed with the president, but you respected the job. You respected the seat. Now nobody even respects the seat. We're defending dirty politicians and throwing the president under the bus. This president was meant to stir shit up. Came into office. He's meant to flip everything upside down on their head. And when he's done, that's when we need to go, okay, now that everything's turned upside down, now we need to put the right people in power to make it go better. That's what I think. Okay, we got one last subject here, and then we'll get to the chat. So like I said, adults then versus adults now. So what it means to be a young adult and how people compare today to the 60s. First, what is the claim? The claim is that young adults today have it easier, that previous generations worked harder, became independent earlier, and handled responsibility sooner. You often hear the version of this like, people grew up faster back then, or people today just don't want to work. I've heard that before too. People don't want to work. They just don't know how to work. They want to just have everything given to them. Is what I've heard. That you're talking about my kids' generation, people right behind me. The majority of the age group that watch this channel are between that age. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think that a lot of their jobs are being taken from them, and it's not fair. So what the popular beliefs, adults between 30 and 50 sit in an unusual position. They were raised by parents who grew up close to that era. So they hear, comparisons constantly. Buy a house young, start a family early, stay in one career. And when life doesn't follow a path, it feels like something went wrong. I've heard today it's a better plan to become a plumber, a carpenter, or an electrician than it is to go to college for a 4-year degree, because those jobs are going to be taken by AI. Crazy. So what does the evidence say? In 1960s, the economic structure was different. Housing prices relative to income were significantly lower. College costs were lower. Single home incomes were more common. And, stable long-term employment was easier. Remember when people used to stay in their job for 30 years and then retire with a pension? Does anybody even do that anymore? I'm going to retire at 62, but I don't have a pension. And I worked at Costco for 22 years. So, but then again, I had 2 divorces and they took a lot of that. So it's easier to find many industries. Today's young adults enter adulthood differently. Housing costs are higher relative to wages. They say that women want more out of their men these days. If you're not rich, they don't want to date you. That's kind of shitty. What about the regular people? But anyway, is that true? Women today, do you prefer, or I mean, do you demand somebody be financially independent at 25 or 30 years old already? I think they're just starting life. You know, career paths change more frequently, and technology keeps people connected to work and information constantly. Adulthood itself is happening later, not necessarily because of effort, but because conditions changed. What evidence is missing? There's no clear evidence that one generation is harder working or less responsible than the other. Every generation adapts to the environment it inherits. And you guys are inheriting shit. I'm not afraid to call out my own generation and say we're screwing up the country for our kids. But it keeps going up. So what looks like attitude is often circumstance. There are also myths on the other side. The idea that the past was easier is not fully accurate either. Previous generations faced their own pressures, including war, drafts, limited career mobility for many groups, and fewer social safety nets. So where does this land? Young people, adulthood today is not easier or harder. It's simple in a simple way. It's different. Economic pressures, technology, and social expectations have changed the timeline. Right? Here's my take. Every generation thinks the next one has it easier, and every generation feels the ground shifting under their feet. What people often miss is that adulthood isn't defined by when we buy a house or start a family. It's defined by adapting to a world that we actually live in. The real conversation isn't about who had it harder. It's about understanding why the rules changed. That's what I think. What do you think? I'll get to the chat now. We can go in there for a little while if we want. If it's too vile, there's not enough regular questions, then we'll go right back to talking more about the difference between then and now. So let's see what people say. So what do you think about these topics? Did you guys have a topic that you liked, that you agreed with, that you related to, or was it all just mumble jumble? Let's see. Holy crap. Is she a man? I don't read that stuff right now. The rules change because of people like on this chat. Yeah, you're right. I remember young adults had manners. They grew up with manners. They respected their elders. You would never hear people speak to somebody that was older than them with this. They just didn't. I think that there was more respect back then. I really do believe that. I think that that's a good point. And yeah, this is just craziness. But then again, in public, nobody says boo to me. So who knows? Honestly, looking at this current country, how are most young adults and this newer generation supposed to fight for it? I agree. Good point. Because it feels like for example, if Minnesota, Tim, whatever his name is, and Omar and that other person there truly were involved in them stealing billions of dollars, how come they're not being held responsible? How can you fight for a country when the politicians rip you off blind, but nobody gets in trouble? You have the Epstein thing going on. You have high-ranking people in all of the departments that they're hiding the information from the public for. So if you're rich, you can do whatever you want. If you're middle class or struggling, then you're held to all the higher standards than the people above you. And is that a country that you're worth, you're going to lay your life down for? So for these people, you're going to lay your life down to protect the people that are ripping you off? I don't know. I think that'd be kind of hard decision to make. They would never face justice. No, I agree with you. I don't think they'll ever face justice. I think that they get away with this. It is just ridiculous. Look at Tim Walsh. After his state lost all that money, he asked for $10 million from the federal government saying, you broke it, you fix it, federal government. You can't just break something and leave. From Tim Walsh. Oh my God, that is such a... Would you fight to protect that man? Would you Would you lay down your life to protect him? I can't say that I would. Hey, Brooke, love your lives. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I support LGBTQ people. Me too. LGBTQ is they've kind of had a run of some crazy mistakes lately, but it's not their fault. They're trying to do what's best for the people and support stuff. It's like the younger generation supports the hell out of people like me. The older generation, I think, is confused, and the generation between 30 and stuff just want the noise to stop. They don't care so much about us, but when you involve their kids, sports, and everything, that's when they start to care. More people like me in this movement, I think a lot of trans people think like I do. We just need to step up and start making some noise louder than the fools that are sending us down the road. When we start to do that, then we're going to change the narrative, right? Because transgender is always going to be there. There's always going to be people that are transgender because we're part of the just natural diversity of people. Okay, trans women are here at 15 years, and I support you. What are the difference even in the trans community? People hate when they don't understand or refuse to get educated on. Yeah, see what that again. We are all different, even in the trans community. People. That's the thing is, what happened? Why did it get to a point where all trans people were supposed to think alike? All of us were supposed to be like, yes, sports. You can play in sports. You don't have it. We were all, and if we didn't think like the majority, everybody wanted to cancel you. Or as a trans person, you're transphobic. It's like, no. How about we just believe common sense? Where did the common sense go? I want to know who leaves these ideas. Where do they come from? And they don't benefit us at all. Believe me, the Democratic Party are using transgender people as a bargaining chip. Trust me, they are. They're going to say, okay, fine, we'll give in on this trans issue if you do this for us. They don't give a hoot about us. We're just a bargaining chip. We're such a small number of people anyway. We can't even affect the vote, but they act like we are the biggest threat to this country since communist. I don't get it. I don't get it because it's not real, but the majority of average Americans think that transgender people are this huge threat or that we're after their kids. And it's such a small number that actually set this narrative, and we're paying the price. We need to stand up and you got a safe place here. If you're trans, you think you come here, you can say what you want. Nobody's going to cancel you here for having common sense. Okay, what do we got? Gen X doesn't care. Everybody just be yourself. Yeah, Gen X, I was born at the end of Boomer, right? But I was kind of raised with the Gen X people. And they do. But I think as Gen X people and the end of the Boomers like me, we need to take some responsibility for the state of our country right now. Because we were the ones that voted in these people that actually kind of screwed it up. Let's say every generation has problems. I just feel really bad that I'm leaving my kids $33 trillion in debt, and it's going to be higher every year because we can't balance the goddamn budget. It makes crazy. Okay, the younger generations say what happened to the Vietnam, saw what happened to the Vietnam and Afghanistan veterans. Government does not care about those who fight for it. I couldn't agree with you more. Do you know that Vietnam veterans, the veterans' wives, if they split up or something, the wife no longer gets coverage. The kids do, but the wife gets completely cut off. I think that the wife should have the same benefits as the husband. They stayed there. They were there for the support system for the husband while he was gone, something to fight for, to come back to. That's very, very, very important to soldiers, is the wife back home, knowing that they're holding down the fort. They're being loyal and loving, and they're waiting for them to come back. That gives them incentive to stay freak alive. I think wives they don't get enough credit for that. And I happen, my youngest daughter, her husband was a soldier in Iraq. He drove truck stuff, and she was there. I'm sure that she was an important asset for him to just fight like hell to get home alive. And he did, thank God. So let's see, what do we got here? Why do you wear a cross? Because if you're trans, why? What does being trans have to do with religion? Can somebody please explain that? Why wouldn't I? I'm Christian. Why wouldn't I wear a cross? Because I'm trans. I don't get. Do you seriously think being trans makes me evil or the demon? Do you really, really believe that? Because if you do, I think that you seriously probably need to see somebody because you are seriously delusional. Yeah, you can support God and be LGBTQ. Exactly. I don't get people that say that stuff. I don't understand where they come from with that. Even if you think of me as a whatever enemy, it says in the Bible to support your enemies, to love your enemies. Those who practice such things shall not inherit the kingdom of God. That is not true. We're not supporting evil. What is wrong with you people? Really? Read the book that you so-called echo it. Okay, look at the verse. No, I'm not going to go through the Bible stuff. Let's talk. Anybody else want to talk about the difference between the generations? That's what I want to talk about because I think it's very important for the people coming up. I call them kids because I'm 61 years old. So anybody that's 30 or 40 years old to me is a kid. And I think they take that a little bit disrespectful because at 30 and stuff is kind of where you're starting to really feel the pressures of life. You're married, a lot of them, with kids, trying to pay rent or a mortgage, and to be called a kid is not right. I know that, but to me, they're just young people. I have kids that age, which is probably why I refer to them kids, but I don't think you're kids. I think you have it really tough right now. I think that your life is more uncertain than, even though I went through the Cold War, I never felt the pressure I think that young people feel today. I knew that a house was within reach for me if I worked hard enough. I'm not sure it is for a kid. If you got to pay $1 million for a house, that's like a $5,000 or $6,000 a month house payment. How is that achievable for anybody? And then if you do take the leap and buy a house, my God, what if you lose your job? Unemployment's not going to pay you $5,000 a month. That's got to be scary as hell. I really feel terrible. I mean, the price of housing has gone crazy. My very first home that I bought, I was 25 years old. I paid $160,000, 160. I sold it, I think 4 or 5 years later, maybe 6 years, maybe, I don't know exactly how long it was, for $360,000. I made a profit, paid off all my bills, moved to Canada. Today, that very same house is $900,000. That house is not worth $900,000. It's just a tract home in Northern California. But for that same house that I paid $1,500 a month for, is now $5,000 a month if you get the mortgage. How is anybody supposed to do that? Right? How are they? The economy nowadays is cooked and people getting very little money from jobs that make it even worse. Yeah, the cost of the wages have not gone up in comparison to the price of everything. They just haven't. Here's what a lot of people don't realize about the 70s and the 80s. That's when credit became a big thing. People started spending money on credit. Our credit debt now for the country is about to reach $1 trillion. But back then, so it gave the appearance of that the wages were keeping up with inflation because people started to use credit. And that was a false presumption that everything was great because the bill came due. Now we're at a place where we're $1 trillion in debt and credit. People are tapping out on their credit and they're having struggles. And yet here's our young people, the people 25 to 30, 35 years old going, what do we do now? We can barely afford an apartment, let alone a house. If you want to live in San Francisco, you're going to pay $2,500 a month for a freaking studio apartment. This is crazy. I mean, I feel so horrible for young people these days. I really do. I'm young and I fully agree with her. What she is saying is completely right, and we have proof. Yes, we do. We do. And if I get really angry when I hear Generation X people talk about how great they are, because I think, yeah, we had it okay growing up. I get that. But you can't sit there and talk and brag about yourself when you left an economy and a country in shambles for your children to inherit. I don't care if you drunk out of a water hose or you came home after the street lights came on. What did you do when you were an adult? Who did you vote in? I could tell you what you did. You voted all the entry-level jobs over to China. You voted all the manufacturing jobs to another country. Those are the things. Remember, it used to be made in the USA was a great thing. What if the last time you bought anything and turned it on the bottom and said made in the USA? It's made in Mexico, made in China, made in everywhere else, because we shipped all of our manufacturing jobs overseas so we could have lower prices on shit. That's not fair to the kids growing up. What are our kids supposed to do for work? And the jobs that are out there are all filled by illegal immigrants. Not all of them, but a lot of them are being taken from those jobs. I can see why kids nowadays growing up in their 20, 25 years old going, what are we supposed to do? So they go to college and they say, okay, well, I'll get a college degree. Well, that doesn't mean as much as it used to. Nowadays, okay, you go to college. What if you become a computer programmer? Now Chat GPT can do that faster and better than most kids. So you just wasted your whole thing. I can see how they look at this world today and go, what are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to court a lady and get married and have children and support it? I just don't. I think you guys have it really hard. And I wish I had a better answer. I wish my generation left you a better country. And at least they could do is take responsibility for it. That's what I'm saying. That's all. And I know a lot of people that are Generation X don't like it when I say this. They want me to shut the hell up. I'm just spitting the truth. It's nice to hear older people talk about the experiences of coming to age. You guys have it tough. I mean, think about it. When I was young like you people, when I was 25 years old, that's when I started working for Costco. And I worked for 1 year as a regular employee. I got promoted after a year to a manager's position. The manager's position paid me $34,500 a year. And back then I thought, oh my God, this is great. I supported my wife, our new child, and the rent. And then we bought a home. So through that one salary, while my wife was pregnant, took, a year or so off to raise the kid, we were okay. If we were, watched our money. But on a $34,000 a year salary, we were able to buy a house. We both had a car. We were raising a kid. Imagine trying to do that today. Now, the starting pay for a Costco manager now is $75,000 a year. But that still doesn't equal what it costs now when my house was $160 and now it's $900. I mean, this is terrible. I don't know what you kids are going to do. You have my I will do everything I can to try to vote in, talk the best people, to get these crooks out of the office and try to balance the budget for the rest of my life to fix what we broke for you guys. I will say for my generation, I'm sorry that we didn't vote better, that we didn't put people in power that didn't rip you off. I'm sorry. Nobody else might tell you that, but I will. Okay, what do we got? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you. I am Christian too. I was just wondering. Sorry, Brooke. It's okay. I just get it so often, like, how dare you wear a cross? I've had people say to me, take that cross off. And it's like, why would I do that? God loves me. I believe in the Lord. I believe in the Savior. I believe in the Bible and stuff. I wear this cross, I don't wear it for no reason at all. I wear it because I believe in it. I like my partner right now is in the hospital. Chris is back in the hospital. She had pneumonia. They looked at her CAT scan. They realized that she actually has had a stroke recently. It was a small stroke, thank God. But this is where I had to put my faith in God. That's all. Okay, but it's okay. Don't worry about it. Because you should take I'm not going to read that. You guys don't deserve to be read. Okay, blame boomers, neglected. It was mostly millennials and Gen X who foreclosures after the subprime disaster. You think it was the next ones that following us? I don't know if I agree with you on that. Because, okay, I'm not sure what the generations are. I think how does it go? Correct me if I'm wrong. Doesn't it go, you had boomers, you had X, and then you have millennials? Is that how it goes? Millennials is next after the Generation X? Because how old is a millennial now? I would guess they would be, if I'm 60, 20, so they would be in their early 40s or late 30s, early 30s to late 30s. Is that how old? Because I can't, they just started voting 10 years ago. So I don't contribute the state of our country now to somebody who only started voting 10 or 15 years ago. Because since my generation has been voting for 40 years. I don't know. I mean, I could be wrong. This is just my opinions on this. Millennials and Gen X applied for the majority of subprime loans. Yeah, you mean the crash back in 2002? Is that the one you're talking about, where they were talking people into, financing houses that they couldn't afford, claiming false income on like renting bedrooms out and stuff? That was so bad. Oh my gosh. If that's what you're talking about, I totally agree. People, that was stupid. That was just stupid of people. I sold my house right before that crash happened. And thank God I did. Right before that crash, I think it was was that 07 that crash happened? Was it 07? Something like that. I can't remember exactly, but I remember I had already sold my house. And then the market crashed. The oldest Gen Z are about 30. Okay, millennials. Where'd that go? I just lost it. The oldest Gen Z are about 30. Millennials are in their 40s and getting close to 50. Okay, so the millennials, then they have to take a little bit of responsibility too, right? Because they've been voting for, gosh, quite a while now. If you're in your 50s, you guys have been voting for about 30 years. So yeah, you're responsible for it too. I agree. Like my oldest daughter is in her 40s, but she kind of grew up in between generations because I was 17 when she was born. So she kind of started, we started early with her, but I don't know. I think it's anybody who's in a voting age right now, we have an opportunity to fix this. And it starts by voting out people that are just no good. That, have you guys heard of that senator called Hawley? I think it's Hawley or something. He was questioning one of the people from Minnesota. I really like that guy. I wish he would run for higher office. I think he's really, really just a decent guy. Hey, Brooke, I love your comment. What should I do? I can't stop getting denamed or dead named by family, friends. Also, I'm a new subscriber. Thank you. I appreciate you subscribing. Look, my mom will never call me Brooke. That's just a fact. My brothers will never call me Brooke. Fact. My brother, the oldest brother, still calls me bro when he texts me. We just got back in contact. We just started opening collaborations, but he calls me bro. He refuses to even acknowledge the fact that I'm a transgender woman. And I had two choices. Either I just say, screw you. If you're not going to acknowledge who I am, I'm just not going to talk to you and have a relationship. Or I can just say, I don't care. Do what you want. If that's what makes you happy, then call me that. And that's what I've chosen, because how they perceive me doesn't matter. It's how I perceive myself. If I'm living my best life and they're stuck in that's on them, not me, right? I'm happy with who I am. I'm proud of who I am. And if they can't handle it, then so be it. I'm not going to completely disassociate myself with my family because they can't accept for who I am, because it's hard. This is a hard thing to accept, especially from your family, because your family's only known you a certain way and now all of a sudden you're different. So that's what my advice would be. Just go with the punches. Who cares? They're not. How often is your intermediate family really involved in your actual life anyway? If it's going to keep the peace and the love in your family, then do whatever you want to do. That's just my opinion. Some people would say, hell no, you tell them that it's all or nothing. I just don't think that. I think family is more important. And maybe over time, they'll accept you for who you are. Maybe they're just bucking the system now. Hey, Brooke, love your content. What should I do? I can't get, okay, I just read that one. I dodge most of the Gen Z problems because I don't own a smartphone. Wow. Didn't own a smartphone until I was 18 and owned an older desktop until I was 15. Wow. Is there any, well, obviously people are online, but when I was working at Costco, I told you guys before, I started at 25 years old, something like that. It was 1989, I think it was, my first year at Costco. There wasn't cell phones, and cell phones costed so much money. Oh my God, they were so expensive. That was like when I got my first cell phone. And I remember my wife and I had split up. So I was dating this lady who lived in Canada. That's why I moved to Canada for 3 years. But I fell asleep while I was on the phone with her on my cell phone. I fell asleep and she didn't hang the phone up. And it was like a 3-hour open line. And I got my bill. It was like $600. There was no, long distance free back then. Hell, just for a call the next city over was long distance, even on your landline. Things have changed in a lot of ways. But I'm so curious, does anybody not have a cell phone? If I didn't have my cell phone, I'd feel like I left my arm behind. Who wouldn't be disappointed as parents when their child announces their sexual preference is a plus? Well, okay. Back in the day, the 70s and 80s and stuff, parents thought the same way about gay and homosexuals as they do trans people now. I mean, I remember fathers disowning their kids, kicking people out of the house because they're being gay. People used to think it was contagious, that if you gave a gay person a hug, you'd either catch a disease or you might become gay yourself. They wouldn't let kids around gay people. They wouldn't let gay people adopt children because they thought that there'd be a heavy influence. It's the same thing that's happening amongst trans people now. Nowadays, people know better. Gay people are just who they are, right? They're wonderful people. They're allowed to adopt. I personally know a lesbian who has adopted multiple children, raised them perfectly. I'm just hoping it gets to a point where the trans community is looked at the same way that the homosexual community is now in a little while. But if we keep making stupid decisions and trying to get the country to believe shit that's just not real, like if somebody asks you as a transgender person, can you get pregnant and you're a transgender female like me? Do me a favor. Say no. Just say no. When they ask, what's a woman? Say, you mean what's a female or what's a woman? Because I'm a woman, but I'm not a female. Be clear about the differences. It's when you get into those discussions with people, it's a gotcha moment. Oh, you can't tell us what a woman is? Yeah, I'm a woman. I'm a transgender woman. I'm not a biological female. I'm a transgender woman. And I'm damn proud of that. I'm not here to take anything from biological female or their spaces. I don't need to make me whole. You're omnisexual. I don't know what that even is. Please explain. I remember back when I was a kid in the 90s. So you were born in the 90s. Okay. You're not a woman. Yes, I am a woman. I'm not a female. There's a difference. Where Brooke is a woman and see her as that. Thank you. I appreciate that. You're a man. No, I'm a male. There's a difference between a man and being a male. I was biologically male. I was born that way. I'll die that way. You got to understand, people. Look, I'm not going to argue with you on who I am. I know what I am. You're the ones that can't accept that there's a different variance in people now, right? Not us claiming that we are biological females or that we should take anything in their spaces. But you need to accept the fact there's a different kind of woman now. A transgender woman is a woman. They are not a female, but they are a woman. Okay? That's the part that you just got to get used to because we're not going anywhere. Now, I would prefer that we just accept the fact that we're a little different than other people. That's okay with me. But to say you can't claim to be a woman is just wrong. I'm not claiming biological anything. I'm a biological male. I will die a biological male. However, I can be a woman. I don't understand why there is a large sum of people who view sexuality and outward expression as political standpoint. I don't either. There's been, like people say, oh, there's only two genders. Do they know that male seahorses give birth? just as an example in nature, how there is so many divergencies. God had a great sense of humor. He made a platypus, right? I mean, what makes him think that it's so cut and dry as you can't be this, can't be that? My brain, I was born thinking that I was supposed to be a girl, but I was born biologically male. It's something I had to deal with my whole life. And finally, I figured out what I needed. I needed to become me like I am now, but it didn't confuse me to think that I was the same thing as Chris. my partner here, or my daughters. I have 2 daughters. I'm not the same as them. I'm different than they are. This is just how I express myself, how my brain aligns with the body. I'm perfectly okay with who I am, and I'm perfectly okay with not overstepping my boundary. Like, people ask me all the time, do you think you deserve the same rights as a biological female? Of course not. I'm not a biological female, but I deserve respect for who I am. I deserve rights as a human being, as an American, but not the same ones as biological females. They earned those things. I'm not here to take anything from them. If nothing else, I admire them. I wish I was biological female, but I'm not. And I'm okay with who I am. As soon as trans people can accept the fact that we're not biological women and stop trying to take shit from them or go into their spaces, we as a people are going to be a lot more accepted and comfortable, because people really don't want to care about us. They don't. They'd rather just go, leave the weirdos alone. We don't care as long as you ain't fucking with us. When you started messing with the kids and the sports and everything, that's when people started to care. And since they can't come up and beat the snot out of us, they vote us out. We don't want that. We just want to live our lives, and people just at least respect us as human beings. That's all you got to do. Leave us alone. And as trans people, stop expecting the world to adjust to you. We are asking the world to accept us. They're not asking us to accept them. You get it? We need to give and take, right? Know who we are. Stop saying that you're a biological female, that you can get pregnant and stuff. Only if you're a trans man, you can get pregnant, not a trans woman. Once you admit that, the noise goes away. You take away all their ammunition if you just admit what reality actually is. I'm assuming that an issue is too tough, correct? I'm assuming that an issue is too tough. I don't know, Alex. I don't know what you're. Alexia, is that Alexia? Durango, I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean? It should take his kids away from him. DSC. What does that mean? What is DSC? I don't know all these acronyms and stuff. I'm sorry. I'm not just not adverse on all that stuff that much. If people tell you that they're trans, they're not deceiving people. No, they're not deceiving people. They're telling you open. It's obvious that I'm trans. Here's what I tell trans people when it comes to dating. I'm 61 years old. I'm not out there at the bars. However, if I was, and for the young people that are out there doing the scene, if a guy comes up to you and they shows interest in you in a, sexual way or whatever, want to hook up kind of a way, I think as a trans person, you have a moral obligation to tell them right there, by the way, I'm trans. That does two things. It keeps you safe, and it gives them the option whether they continue to pursue you or to say thank you, but no thank you, and walk away. No embarrassment for them then. That should be automatic, because you're not trying to hide who you are. And if you don't come clean at first, you could potentially put yourself in a position to where you embarrass the hell out of them, or you put yourself in harm's way, and that's no way to do it. Be proud of who you are. You don't have to hide who you are. Be proud of the fact you're a transgender woman, and tell them, hey, I'm trans, by the way, just so you know. I think you're hot. I think you're cool, but I wanted you to know that so you could still, if you still cool with this, I'd love to dance, or you can buy me a beer, whatever. If not, then they got the right to walk away. And if they walk away, you're not missing anything, right? You're not missing anything. You dodged a bullet. You're the one trying to silence anyone's opinion counter to yours in an irrational way. How am I doing that? If I am, I apologize. I'm coming off completely wrong. I don't think I'm doing that. I mean, if I am, please tell me how, and I will definitely look at it and see if you're correct. If you're correct, I'll change my approach. I don't think I'm doing that at all. I'm trying to get everybody to just get along, accept people for who they are. I don't understand that. I feel too nervous to do that. To tell people? You feel too nervous to tell people? Once you do it a couple times, you'll feel good. Once you start just saying it out loud, I'm trans woman. I'm not a female. I'm a trans woman. It kind of gets to the point where you feel proud to say that. You actually do tell people, hey, I'm trans. Yeah. Are you trans? Hell yeah, I am. Trans woman. If you say that I am too, my friend, I will probably be bullied. If I say that I am to my friend, I would probably be bullied. if your friend's gonna bully you for being trans, how good of a friend is it? I'm just asking. I don't know. You know, I've lost friends too because of this. But I think it's because the noise is so terrible in the public. How do they don't even know how to accept this. It's craziness. Let's see. Do you believe in Jesus? Yes, I do. Why do you believe there are so many issues between men and women nowadays, in your opinion? Um, I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know what you're exactly asking me. Between, biological men and women, I think that they're scared. I think they're nervous of what the future has to hold. I think they're nervous that they can't meet expectations. I think that, I could be wrong, but I think that a lot of women think that if a man isn't financially secure earlier in life, then they want to keep looking. And I don't think that's really, fair to the guy. I think they're trying, but it's a harder time to become financially independent than it was back then. So there's a lot of stress on young people right now. You know, it's hard to look at their future and go, yeah, I have a great future. Look, I can buy a house. I got a good job. They don't even know if AI is going to take their job away. This is really a hard time for young people right now. Really a hard time. People are having to stay with their parents longer and longer and longer. And trust me, when you're in your 20s and you're still living at home, you feel ashamed of yourself. You don't want to tell anybody that. I still live at home. That's a horrible thing to have to deal with when you're starting out life. Or maybe you went 4 years through college and all of a sudden what you studied for 4 years is going to be taken away by AI. I understand why they're feeling like, hey man, what the hell do we got to do? What do we have to do to get through here? Their future is very insecure. It's very uncertain, and I pity it. Absolutely. Don't bother yourself with the trolls. Generally, I don't. I really don't. If there happen to be no other question that's there, I'll answer a troll. I don't have a problem, especially answering a troll that truly has a question. But when they just want to be gross, I don't care. Unless I'm feeling mean and then I call them out and you know rip them on it. But you're right. Do you know? Oh, okay. Let's see. What else we got? What is the situation? How many kids do I have? I have 2 kids and 3 grandsons. 2 daughters and 3 grandsons. It gets confused. Yeah. No, not transphobic. Yeah, it's confusing. They don't have to. It is very confusing. It's like, here I am. I came out as trans when I was 56 years old. My mother had no idea. None of my friends had any idea. Hell, Christine, who was living with me, had no idea. So for me to expect everybody to just snap their fingers and accept it is kind of, you're talking 50 years of me being one way, and all of a sudden I'm telling you, I'm showing up in a dress, makeup, I'm a different name, a different gender. That's hard for people to accept. I have to accept the fact that that's not easy for them and respect that. I got a pinched nerve in my neck, guys. Okay, the FD have been paying pretty local for the population would be around 900 million. Let's be honest, most of the population disappearing is a net positive. I don't agree. I don't know about that. Some people think that we need to breed more, that we're not breeding enough to sustain the human population. They say China in 30 years or whatever is going to be like, they're already in a negative, because remember when China, you had that one kid policy, and so most people were waiting for boys. They actually would snuff out the daughters if they were born because they could only have one kid. Now it's bit them in the ass. Now they're trying to beg people to have larger families because there's no girls in China no more. They're all boys now. They're in a situation, and they fear that if we do the same thing in the United States and all around the world, actually the world population can dwindle down to nothing. And then there'll be no humans left. That might be a good thing for the planet, but bad for us. Let's see. I wish you'd turn back to your old self, which is the self that God made you. I see. I'm not going to bag on you for that belief. I understand where you're coming from, but God did not make me the way you think God made me. God made me the way you're looking at me, right? It's just a harder thing to accept. This is exactly how God made me. It just took me a long time to accept how God made me. Questions. What do you think about the whole birth rate thing too? Oh, there, I just mentioned that. Pale people blame young people to pressure to make babies. Yeah, but this is where I sympathize with the young people. What young person today would be, responsible by having a child when financial securities and financial future are so uncertain, job market is so uncertain? Why would you feel comfortable having a child when you don't even know if you're going to have a job? What do you do with the child if you lose your job? Or your husband loses your job? I can see why if I was young right now, I would not be thinking about having kids because I'd be worried about supporting myself, let alone a family. That's what I feel for you guys. I really do. As someone who is a child, I am quietly mature and know internet safety. I'm scared nowadays to leave my own house due to icebergs. Look at ice. How old are you, young person? I don't know how old you are, but listen to me. What you hear about ICE, they're not arresting American citizens. They're not deporting American citizens. They are simply trying to do a job that the government has assigned them to do. These laws were voted in by Democrats and Republicans. These laws are no different. What's happening right now is no different than what happened during the Obama administration. It's just getting more press because they want to attack anything and everything that Donald Trump does. No matter what he does, it cannot be good because they're trying to win the primaries that are happening in a year, right? That's what this is all about. It's all about stage, basically letting everybody know Donald Trump has too much power, and the only way to take the power away from him for the remainder of his time as president is to win back the House and the Senate. So just ignore the news. You'll be better off not to listen to the news. And if you do listen to it, listen to a station like News Nation. They're kind of right down the middle, and you're going to get both sides. Listening to ABC, NBC, or CNN or Fox News, you're only going to get half the story, and that's not healthy. You need to hear both sides. You need to be able to stomach both sides. Remember, here's what I think. Everybody in this world, or in this country at least, should be in the center. And you should vote the policies, not the politics. If you agree with the policy, then you vote that in. If you don't, regardless of parties, don't vote for party, vote policy. It's the only way to save this country. If your worldview is shaped by sensationalism, then look yourself inside and out. Don't come inside and don't come back out. What does that even mean? Hi, Brooke. You are so smart. Thank you. I appreciate that. I don't consider myself that smart. I don't. I consider myself that has the ability to see common sense stuff. That's all. I think if we just stick to common sense, I'm not going to vote for something just because the Republicans do it or just because the Democrats do it. If it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. The fact that our government now, all the Republicans vote the same, all the Democrats vote the same, that is not what people put them in office for. Each state put their senators in office to vote what that state believes in, what the people that voted believes in, not everything across the board. That's not what we do that for. And how about we hold our freaking politicians accountable when they break the law? Nancy Pelosi is worth $300 million. That's impossible. Martha Stewart went to jail for inside trading. Why isn't Nancy being investigated? Omar, whatever her name is over there in Minnesota, went from zero worth to $30 million in 1 year, the same time that her state was being robbed for $9 billion. Why isn't anybody investigating this stuff? Why are they getting away with it? This is why people are sick of it. This is why we really need to pay attention to who we're voting in and the policies. There are good politicians out there, but they're few and far between, and they're being snuffed out by the older class. It's time we had age limits in policy terms where you can only serve so long. These people that have been in the government 40 and 50 years have no idea. They're out of touch. Look at Mitch McConnell. He froze on at this podium, eyes like owls, and he's still making decisions for all of us in our welfare. Look at Barbara. Was it Barbara Boxer? She basically was in power until she died. You need to take the time to vote. Vote. Turn out to vote. It's not just about the president race, about everything, because we control our politicians. And if they're doing bad, we kick them out. We get somebody else in. narrow-minded and complex, completely false. Okay, my what? My bigotry comments are narrow-minded and completely false. I am asking genuine concern and issues trans people have. I am active in a lot of communities and see how people struggle. What are you talking about? My narrow-minded? How am I narrow-minded? Right? Because are you talking about my opinions on underage people transitioning medically? Or are you talking about my opinions about trans people in women's sports? Or the fact that I can't get pregnant? So if that's what you're talking about, please tell me where I'm wrong about any of those and narrow-minded, right? It's obvious. It's science. It's not my opinion. Science says transgender women have the advantage over their biological opponents. That's just science. That's just the way it is. And you need to just accept that. I can't get pregnant no matter what. If that's what you're referring to as me being narrow-minded, then you're just absolutely 100% wrong. I'm sorry. I'm not going to go for an ideology or a thought process just because the LGBTQ says I have to or I'll be canceled. Then cancel me. I don't care. I'm not going to freaking lose my values because of some narrative that's screwed up and doesn't mean anything. And it's just wrong. Who said that anyway? So I can see what your follow-up is. That is Wish. Wish. Not you. Oh, not me? Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. If I lectured you like that and that you weren't talking, I apologize deeply because I take great offense when people attack, my transness or whatever, or that I'm not, I'm trans. I've been called transphobic, and it's like, how's that even possible? But I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You have my apologies. I apologize to you. And the education system is also trash. Yeah, my daughter's a school teacher, by the way. What children are learning is doesn't see it could be useful for them to grow up. Yeah, here's what I've said, and I fought for this all along. I actually started a local petition, our children, our choice, when it came to schools. Schools need to stick to freaking teaching, arithmetic, science, English. Stick to that stuff. You don't have any business dabbling in what parents do. Those are the parents' kids, not yours. Those are not your decisions to make. I know that if a child appears to be something wrong at home, you should report it, but it's not your job to take over and teach them kids what life, how to shape them in life. That's your job, is to teach, not to influence life decisions. Teach. And you should leave your beliefs at the door when you're a teacher. You cannot go in there, and if you're pro-trans and a kid is a little bit feminine, automatically start whispering in their ear that they should do this or this. That's not what this is about. You can't do that. That's the parent's job, not yours. You're there to protect your child. If there's obviously something going on, then you report it. Other than that, you back up. The fact that, in California, they tell teachers not to tell the parents if the kid's identifying as trans at school. That's ridiculous. How could you? I would be so pissed off if somebody didn't tell me what my kid's doing in a school. That's not your job. That's my job. Gosh, all you need is a voice box, doctor, like Tyson. What are you talking about? I actually have an appointment set up for next month to see the voice, to get my my vocal cords soldered together, and hopefully it'll raise the pitch of my voice. I can't come on here and pretend in a pretend voice, because I can't hold that long. I will forget and just slip right back into my normal speaking voice. That's why I'm going to go for the surgery. I see other people that are trans that have the ability to actually talk like a female, and I applaud them. I don't have that ability. I have to talk the way I am and get the surgery, and then it'll sound better. I hope. I get it. I want it to sound more feminine myself. It's hard to make an educational system that inform the next generation about everything going on without being influenced. Yeah, but it's not impossible, and I hope it changes to help them. Yeah, but I guess the only subject in school that should be teaching what's going on now is current affairs, isn't it? I mean, because your history, you don't teach about what's going on. You teach about history, mathematics, English, stuff like that. You're not really teaching current events. You should be teaching, how to read, write, stuff like that. It's when I have a problem when teachers bring their own political beliefs into the classroom. That's you're shaping a child that's not yours. I just don't think that's right. My daughter teaches special needs kids, so she doesn't have that kind of responsibility. My daughter's extremely left leaning. She's left view. I'm not. We don't talk politics because we don't agree. We just don't agree. We don't talk about borders and stuff like that because I'd rather not get into an argument with her and try to, change her mind because she's an adult. She's very intelligent. She's set in her ways, and I have to respect that. That doesn't mean we lose a relationship over it, So she has her beliefs. I have mine. We can go back and forth all day long, but we're not going to change each other's minds. That's okay. That's what the America is all about. You have such an incredible points. In my opinion, correct. And look up to you. I look up to you so much. And young non-binary person, you make me feel so comfortable and proud of my identity and sexuality. Ice out. I'm glad that you feel that way. I disagree with you about ICE out. I think ICE is doing a job. They're doing a job to protect us, and it's being portrayed. Okay, here's some facts. I do not think that those two people that lost their life should have. I don't think that. I think that they went too far. I think we do have some ICE agents that don't have the training that they should have for the situations that they're being put in, especially in situations like in Oregon and Minnesota, where they're having to deal with a very irate public. Now, at the same time, for people to say those are peaceful protests that are going on or just not seeing things for what they really are. These people are doing a job that they're told to do. The job and the position of ICE was voted in by Republicans and Democrats, right? Obama deported as many, if not more, people than has been deported by Trump. The difference is these people just don't like Trump. No matter what he does, they're going to make a big stink out of it. You didn't hear a word about Obama. You remember the kids, the cages for kids? Those were built by Barack Obama, not by Trump. But nobody says anything because they didn't have a problem with Trump. The Democratic states would go ahead and do what Obama asked them to do. But now that it's Trump, they're refusing because they need him to look bad. Don't kid yourself. This is all about the elections that are coming up in a year. This is all about that. After those elections happen, because I truly believe that the Democrats are going to take back the House. They're going to take back the Senate. I truly believe that. And then after that, you watch how shit calms down. It'll just be like, calm down. Because now they know that they have the power to stop Trump in his tracks. He won't have carte blanche. People all calm down. It'll be just like, whoop, whatever. Trust me, this is all political. It's all to get the public in an uproar against a vote that's coming. And as long as the public thinks that Trump is this evil Nazi, they're not going to vote for the Republicans to maintain power in the House and the Senate where Trump has carte blanche to do what he wants. That's what this is all about. Don't let it fool yourself. This is all staging for the election that's coming up in a year. Let's see. In the right mind would encourage medical interventions without fair discussion at any age. No, even at a fair discussion with the parents, like that person that just, sued the psychologist and the surgeon for removing her breasts at 16 years old. She just won $2 million in a lawsuit. That just opened a door for that suit. I personally think there is no kid out there. I don't care who you are. I don't care how much you think or how much you believe that you are who you are. There's nobody out there at that age that can fully understand what it means to transition fully. We don't let kids make any other medical decisions for themselves at all. Why would we let them make this one? Right? Because their brains are not fully developed. They don't quite know. They're going through puberty and stuff like that. So you cannot say that they know exactly who they want to be when they're older. You just can't do it because they mentally can't even comprehend actually what it means to change and go through a sex change operation until they're older and their brains are mature. The thing is, here's what they say. Here's what basically the averages and the percentage say. Most kids when they have an identity crisis, will grow out of it by the time they're 18 years old, right? If we stick them and transition them medically, we've locked them into something that they might not want later on. And if it's one kid, that's one kid too many. There's nothing wrong with making a kid wait till they're mature enough to understand the decisions that they're making. That's why we don't let them vote. They can't get tattoos. They can't join the military. Why would we let them alter their physical appearance? 0 to 18 in one piece, parents. That's your only job. Get your kid from 0 to 18 in one piece and hopefully mentally strong. You can't let kids run the house. And I know kids are out there going, but I know I'm trans. I know I'm not going to change. You don't know you're not going to change. You think you're trans now for life, but you don't know. Maybe you are, but you're still going to be trans at 18, and it's going to be a safe thing. Don't put your parents in the position to make those decisions. That's not fair to your parents. Just be kids. Do what you do. You can represent yourself through dress, through makeup, through hair. You don't need a medical transition because it's not reversible. Once you start, you can't undo it. This is my opinion. You can have your own opinions. This is my opinion. From research, in a lot of cases, when 18-year-olds start transitioning, they aren't fully informed by doctors told they can start and stop. Exactly. You cannot. Okay, here's a big misconception. Puberty blockers don't do anything. They just pause everything. They do too. They can affect your sperm count. If you're a female, they can affect your egg count. They can change a lot going on in your body. The human body is not meant to pause during such an important part of development as puberty. And I can contest for the hormones. Absolutely. After 1 year of hormones, when I first started them, excuse me, this is going to get kind of graphic a little bit, but by 1 year, my penis was flaccid and unusable after 1 year of hormones. And there was no going back. And the size had shrunk from what it was before to about a third of the size. It was almost like my body was trying to absorb the testicles and the penis back up into the body, which was craziness. I knew where I was going. I was going for full transition anyway. However, if I had decided, wait a minute, I'm not so sure about this, it would have been too late. And if a kid's doing the same thing before they're even fully developed down there, and they decide, wow, maybe I'm not trans, they're going to have a useless sex organ down there. It's not reversible. When you start growing breasts, as a guy, you can't get rid of those. They're there forever. That's what I'm saying. There's nothing wrong with making them wait. You're 18. You got a whole life ahead of you. Why would you make such rascal decisions right now? Just let it chill. I know when I was a kid, the things other people would be back when I was in high school was goth, or they had the mohawks, and there were stoners and wore the big old waffle stompers and went around. I don't know any adult that is still that way now. Now, there was feminine people back there when I was back in the 70s and 80s when I was in high school and stuff, that they hid being gay, and they're still gay, but nobody really acts like they did back then. And the thought of being that one kid that goes up to their parents and go, what were you thinking? Why would you let me do this? I was a child. I don't want to be that parent. So guys, I went long already tonight. I'm going to have to wrap this up. I appreciate all the comments. I will go through these comments later on and read them and take any questions that are, legitimate. I will create a follow-up video for those, because I know I miss a lot of questions on this, but I'm just one person. My partner's in the hospital, and please pray for her. She needs to get better. I need her home. And thank you guys. I really appreciate you. Don't forget to like the video. It really helps, because there's a lot of people out there that are trans that are scared. They're afraid to talk out. They're afraid to speak out against what they know is wrong, they know is right, that fear that they'll lose the one connection to people like them. And that's not fair to them. They need to have a safe place that they can come and they can speak their minds, just like we do in this chat. If anybody disagrees with me, I'm totally cool with that. We can always debate back and forth. I think open debate is healthy and needed in this country. But yeah, Bobby was my original name. That was my thing. You're not hurting me by saying that. Somebody says, okay, Bobby, it doesn't matter to me. That was my name for 56 years. I'm not that kind of person. I'm not that trans person that's going to be, how dare you use my death name? No, that's not this person. Sorry. That's who I was. That's my life that I lived for a long time. It can't just scoop it and be a gone. So If you think you're doing something to try to, stab me one, doesn't matter to me. You're not hurting me at all. My mother will never call me Brooke. She's always going to call me Bobby. That's the way it is. I don't care. I am who I am. Love you guys. We don't need any more open minds. We do. We need people that are willing to listen to both sides. That's what we need. Until what's today? I wasn't even going to come on today. Today's Sunday, but I did. So I'll probably come back on Tuesday, not Monday. I'm going to switch it up a little bit. So Tuesday we'll be back on with another show, another topic, and then we'll get back into the same debates. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time. I'm Brooke. This is Brooke Talks, and we'll see you soon. Bye, Daddy.